Okay, guys, I'm sorry about the delay. I will be posting your what do you call the internals as soon as I'm done grading with the midterm makeups that I took today. Anyways, before I explain the question that I asked you guys regarding the bottleneck, let me explain one of the concepts of combining the reliability concepts with bottleneck. So let's take a simple example here. We have three hypothetical workstations. Let's call it A, B, and C. A has, let's say, a process time of 12 minutes, B has 15 minutes, and C has 10 minutes. All right. So let's assume that in this case, the reliability is 100% for all of them. So if we calculate the hourly capacity, A would have an hourly capacity of 5 units per hour, B would have an hourly capacity of 4 units per hour, and C would have an hourly capacity of 6 units per hour, right? So overall, the design capacity of the entire assembly line as a whole would be 4 units per hour, which is the lowest one. So B is the bottleneck, and the design capacity would be 4, right? So now to make things a little interesting, let's add the reliability component to all the workstations. All right, so let's assume that task A or workstation A has a reliability of 60%, B has a reliability of 90%, and C has a reliability of 80%. So in this case, it's a bit tricky. So 5, 4, and 6 were the design capacities. Now the effective capacity for A would be 60% of 5, right? The effective capacity of B would be 90% of 4, and the effective capacity of C would be 80% of 6. So in this case, A would have an effective capacity of 3 units per hour, B would have an effective capacity of 3.6 units per hour, and C would have an effective capacity of 4.8 units per hour, right? So that's quite simple. So obviously we picked the lowest one. In this case, the bottleneck would be A. Therefore, the effective capacity of the overall assembly line would be 3 units per hour. So that's pretty simple. Now, if I wanted to increase the capacity of this particular assembly line, I have two ways. I can either, let's say, increase the or let's say add another bottleneck workstation. That would obviously increase the capacity, but that might be quite expensive, right? Another way to add capacity would be to increase the reliability of the bottleneck workstation. So let's take the first example. If I added another workstation, right? Okay, before I do that, if I wanted to calculate the overall reliability of the entire system as a whole, so assuming that all components A, B, and C have to be functioning for the entire system to be running, then the design capacity, the overall reliability would simply be the product of these three. So it's 0.6 times 0.9 times 0.8. So the overall reliability is 43.2%. And simple enough. So let's going back to the previous point. If I wanted to increase capacity, the first thing I could do is I could either add another workstation. So if I added another workstation A, assuming of equal capacity, the effective capacity of A, as in both A combined, would be 6 units per hour. Therefore, my new bottleneck would be 3.6, which is B, right? So the effective capacity now increases from 3 all the way to 3.6 by adding another workstation. Now, instead of adding the workstation, what if I just added a quality control backup, right, that rectified the errors of A, or something in that sort, that identified and rectified the errors? So if I did that, so if I added a backup for A, right, assuming the backup has, let's say, a 90% reliability, a 90% reliability in terms of identifying and rectifying errors, the overall reliability of A as a whole, okay, the reliability of A as a whole would simply be 0.6, which is the probability that A on itself is reliable, plus 0.4, which is the probability that A is not going to be reliable, but times 0.9, which is the probability that the backup is going to be reliable. Therefore, the reliability of A as a whole is going to be 0.96 or 96%. So what that does is that increases the effective capacity of A from 5 all the way, from 3 all the way to 4.8. Okay, so which kind of increases the effective capacity of the entire system also to 3.6, because B is obviously the next bottleneck. So depending on how much it costs to add a quality control backup or to add a different workstation as a whole, you can pick and choose which might be more appropriate for you depending on each circumstance. All right, so that's the simple the simple facts. Now let's look at the let's look at the next question. All right, the question that I asked you guys in the paper. I didn't really think it through when I was asking you the question, so the reliability numbers are quite high, and as a result, adding a backup doesn't really seem like a feasible option. But anyways, let's look at it. So in this particular question, we can see that the only workstation that has a quality control is the battery production. So if I wanted to calculate the overall reliability of the battery production, including the quality control, that would be like 99.9%. All right, so the first question is the overall reliability, which is simply the product of all of these. So assuming that all of these workstations need to be functioning for the assembly line to work, then the assembly line is only expected to work 83.16% of the time, which is the overall reliability of the assembly line. All right, now to calculate the design capacity, so simply I can just calculate the hourly capacity of each of these. So the we can see here that the lowest hourly capacity is the camera production department, which is 80 units per hour. So that's the design capacity. Now if I wanted to calculate the effective capacity, then I would just multiply the design capacity by the reliability number. So the frame molding here would be 180 times 98%, so that would give me 176.4 units per hour, right? So that right there is the the effective capacity. Okay, so in this case, I can see that the lowest effective capacity is still the camera production department, so it's gone from 80 all the way down to 76.8, which is the new bottleneck. So the effective capacity of this system is 76.8 units per hour. Okay, one more thing. I didn't really think it through, so I think the last part C, where you have to actually find where you have to actually find what is the cheapest way to achieve an effective capacity of 20,000 units per month. Well, you just multiply the effective capacity that we have here. So if I divide 20,000 by 8 and then again by 20 days, I get 125. So I need to reach 125 units per hour. In this case, it's pretty simple how to get that. No backups are required. So yeah, I really didn't think it through when I was designing this question, but I think the one that you guys gonna get in your exam is going to be a slightly more refined version than this.